So Corey just encouraged you to not be too much aware. And I'm going to encourage you to be more aware. So let's see how that works for listening. You have a handout in front of you with several listening challenges that we have this morning, but not just this morning, every morning when we go to work. So how important is listening for the success of your work? Anybody want to throw a percentage out there?
100.
Thank you. I was hoping I'd get 100%. I want you, if you have a pencil with you, to write down 2 factors that get in the way of your ability to listen. It could be this morning to me, or it could be at work. 2 factors. Everybody have at least one? Okay. How many of you would like a tool that would help you be more aware of those things that get in the way of listening? Awesome. Guess who gave us one?
Yes.
Korzybski. All right, so if you would, Corey had you doing things with your hands. I'm going to make you stand up if you're able this morning. If not, you can do this from your seat as well. One of the things that Korzybski wanted us to be very aware of is that the language we use may not align with the territory or the experience in which we find ourselves. And it wasn't just a mental exercise for him. He wanted your entire body to be involved. So if you would, raise your hand with me and repeat after what I say. All right? So, of all that's going on, what I sense is not all that's going on. What I label is not all that I sense. And what I conclude is definitely not all that I label. So I better go back up here and ask some good questions. Thank you. You can sit down. It will really help you a lot if you think about that in terms of specific labels you're using. I think of Nadine last night and the hate speech. What are the responses? What are the effective responses we have? And I think it's about thinking about our automatic thinking processes, the assumptions that we're leaping to. I had a good friend travel with me on one of my trips to teach a class called Language and Thought. I'm very lucky at Manchester to have inherited the standalone general semantics course. And one of the things I have them in the semester with is create a time-binding tactic. What are you going to pay it forward with? You've learned all this about your language and your listening. What are you going to do differently? And my good colleague, who's a chemistry professor, said, Mary, we need a structural differential for the classroom. I mean, think about it, right? The things I say, and then all this stuff gets in the way, these factors get in the way, and then students interpret what it means. And her point was, let's go back and ask questions of the professor, right? Instead of each other, and then they're operating on the wrong assumptions and they're learning the wrong material. They're not applying it the way they want to. So I said, this is amazing. Let's collect data. We both teach upper level courses and I teach a lower level course. So our question was, to what extent does an awareness of this automatic thinking process, being able to say this is what I'm abstracting, how does that affect your ability to listen in class? And we believed that it absolutely, if they knew it as a collective, if we were collecting all of their responses throughout the semester, they would start to create plans for how to deal with these factors that get in their way. So it's kind of fun. It was an action plan depending on what we found. What do you think we found? If you look at those boxes on that first page of your handout, what would you put in those boxes? What factors get in their way of listening in a chemistry class, in a communication class? Yeah, thank you for holding that up. Cell phones, awesome. So we had 45 students in what I call a core class. It says communication studies here, but it actually is housed in our department, but we have all majors across the university. I also had 19 students in an upper level listening course, which is taught for the business college and also social sciences. And then we had 44 students in an upper level chemistry course. How many of you have had any experience with Poll Everywhere? Do you have students use this or use this at a meeting sometime? It's wonderful. I was a little worried about how well it would work here today, so I came with one already ready, but this was the question they were answering in class. In 2 words or less, list the factors that affect your ability to hear and process what I say. And so these are coming in, right, as we collect the data. So we don't know who they're coming from, but they are telling us what's getting in their way. Life, looking at you, freezing, the classes before. The really nice part about Poll Everywhere is that it also gives you a word cloud. It may not be working here, but you know what word clouds are, right? Guess what the middle of that word cloud said in big letters? Think of the title of my presentation. Food, hunger. Hunger was the number one thing that they were worried about. So on the back of your handout, you can actually see these a little bit closer up. For those of you who said, what are the factors? Technology was one. My phone gets in the way. Also, the projectors get in the way, and my ability to see what's happening in the classroom gets in the way. But by far, the biggest was this physiological, right? This whole idea that I'm tired and I'm hungry. And if you look here, this is first-year students, right? A lot bigger percentage to the tired and hungry because I'm not used to what it means. I don't know if any of you wrote tired and hungry this morning, but we maybe didn't get the sleep we needed last night, being here and talking and thinking. You all also can see something called psychological. These are those issues of life, I'm depressed, anxiety, ADHD, the fact that I don't know if I'm going to stay in college. I don't know what to do in college, right? This incredible list of the things that are just happening in their heads the whole time, and us as well. I mean, Corey just talked about if we suffer from anxiety and depression, what are the things we can do to be more aware of the now instead of constantly thinking about how depressed and how much anxiety we have. This whole idea of environmental noise, which I think is very interesting. Now, this is an upper level listening course with a lower level first year core course, but now I want you to see the 2 upper level courses. Do you notice any difference between this and the one before? What shrinks? The physiological shrinks, right? And this idea of environmental noise gets bigger. Guess what? You're taking classes with people you know, and the people beside you are getting in your way. You would not believe all the answers of, my neighbor's talking to me. I need to sit somewhere else. They're clicking, they're clicking their pens. They're moving. They do all these distracting things that they've done to me in classes before, right? So this whole idea of it's not just the environmental noise of the noise outside the classroom, but it's actually the noise of the person beside me and their movements. So here's our revised, or as I would say, the one that's filled in for you now so you can actually see it. What we found, we used grounded theory. For those of you who do research with qualitative analysis, you know that you find frequency of themes and specific examples for each of these categories. And you can see the kind of the noise, the psychological noise, the physiological noise, the environmental noise, and this whole thing called, we actually put it in a bigger category called course content because it was language. It was what was getting in the way. Previous knowledge of chemistry was getting in their way. The fact that they couldn't ask questions, they felt like they needed to ask questions about content, but they didn't want to appear stupid. All those things of language that get in our way. And also this idea of nonverbal. Tone of voice, how quickly you're speaking gets in the way of people listening. So we made it into 3 overarching categories: internal noise, external noise, and course content. So along about midterm, they knew all this. And then we said, hey, take these categories and tell us what action plan you're going to use. So here are several of the action plans. If you'll notice, it says across the bottom, I will. They had to make an intention to do one of these. If you look at that whole list, you're not going to do them all, right, for the rest of the semester. But what one thing can I do? It was amazing how many people said tired and hungry. And the idea of talking to college students about maybe going to bed a little early, they started preparing ways they could do that. I mean, you would not believe how they started talking to each other. Come to my room. It's quiet there. You can sleep in my room. You can come this direction. And this whole idea of if I'm depressed, I need to see a counselor. And there's so many opportunities on campus to make sure you're doing those things. But all of a sudden it became, they were empowered to take control of their own listening, to take control of what was happening in the class. As we got to the upper level students, you saw a lot of things in terms of being prepared. If I'm in all these classes, it's a really good idea if I make sure that I'm ready for all of these classes. And coming into the room, I can listen more if I've at least glanced at the reading or done some of the work before I come in. I love this one. Understand that in life, things happen that are good and they're bad. And stay focused, right? Come some way to just stay focused. And meditate. A lot of them came up with being more mindful and being meditative. I expected that in my classes because when I teach listening, I teach mindfulness. But the fact that it came up in the chemistry class, I was happy to see. If you'll notice in this listening class, of course, they made a point to focus on the speaker. They made a point to make sure they were taking what the speaker said and applying it to their lives. So that helped them with this psychological noise. I love this. By the way, no Russ. I have service dogs in the classroom. So this particular service dog was distracting, so we actually did not have Russ join us. That's what the Russ is on there. And some of them actually wanted the blinds in the room to be closed so that the outside environment was not distracting them. So what was the most popular, do you think? For psychological noise, what do you think the most popular one was of all the ones you just saw? Eat. That's the physiological, we'll get there. Good time management. And it allowed us to really talk about what that means, to break that word down. So many times we say, oh, just manage your time better and you'll be fine. It was actually, how long is this reading going to take you? A lot of times now when I'm going through assignments, I'll say, you need to make these changes. How long will this change take? 10 minutes. Okay. How long will this change make? Oh, a half an hour. Okay. How about this one? I've got an hour, and I have them pull out their phones and book that hour in. That's what time management is about. Not just talking about the fact that we need to, but actually making a plan for doing it. Now the eat. Here we go. Take a nap. It's a lot of time in a college student's day to take a nap, and they were amazed at how many of them were sharing this back and forth, right? Take a nap. Stay active in class, and we try to talk about that, about moving and making sure that your feet may be moving or you may be doing something with your body to keep you active. And there's the eat breakfast. Turn off your phone. What a concept. I won't ask you how many people have looked at your phone since I've been talking. Sit closer to the front of the room, and that's really a very concrete idea. How many of you sit away from your friends at meetings or sit at the front of a room? I have to, or I talk to the person next to me. And this whole idea of asking clarifying questions. So as you look at this list, and we'll go back to this list, what intention are you going to make? Go back to the factors that got in your way that you wrote down at the beginning of the presentation. What intention are you going to make so that you actually can tune in to what's happening today, IGS, October 12th, 2019. Thank you.